Greetings. Welcome to a Wake the Dead Resident State William Ramsey Investigates co-experience with our special guest Jamie J. Today is Manchurian Candidate number 19. We are continuing. This topic of Manchurian Candidate from fiction to fact has turned into basically just mind control, government mind control, what the mind control operations. We went very deep with the FBI documentation with Esther Brooks that William brought, and today we want to discuss the Jonestown experiment that was, in our opinion, a psychological experiment, and they were they were running many different types of psychological experiments at one time in Jonestown. It was a little like they were mice in a maze, and they were testing their brains, and it was a perfect little segregated control group where they could make see what how to convince parents to give their children Flavor Aid with cyanide in it. How is it that we can convince parents to chop their babies? How is it that we can convince parents to give a debilitating injection to their children? All of those things were tested in Jonestown, and we are here to discuss all of that. And welcome, Jamie. Let you say hi first, and then we'll go and say hi to everybody else. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's my first time doing a show with you guys, so really excited to be here. And yeah, I mean, I've always studied cults and all that stuff. I have a sociology background, and the books I read, they were like older, right? And then I just happened to be watching this show the other night on Netflix, and I hadn't really thought about Jonestown in a long time, and I kind of just landed on it, and I just like the similarities between the stuff that happened, during the pandemic it was so glaring to me that I had to leave Sean a voice message in the middle of the night before I forgot all the points I had to make about it, because it was just so obvious in retrospect, that this was obviously, a test run for all these kind of things that just happened. So Sean said, let's do a show about it. So yeah, really excited to be here today and discuss it.
That's wonderful, and it fits perfectly with these, and synchronicity does these type of things to us, and we end up having these amazing shows out of these brilliant ideas. And I'm thankful that you brought that to our attention, and that we are going forward and having this show today. And welcome, William and Hans. Please say hello to the audience.
Okay, I guess I can say hello. My name is Hans. I am a maverick investigator, and continuing into these different forays, cult, of course, comes from culture. And in fact, one of this thing, it was the army of God, back in, there's a bunch of these cults in the 90s. So this lady who ran it, they all wore uniforms. She said, cult, the word cult is culture, right? So there's a whole variety. Jonestown being the most prolific, we think about these really freaky set, whatever 70s cults, whatever gurus, but there are a lot of cults. Many of these Christian cults, like how about Alamo, right? Joe Alamo, millions of dollars, you know, underage brides. He also said basically, I'm God, right? But Jim Jones has become etched into the American consciousness just because of the audaciousness, the depravity, the the terrifying, the tapes just running over and over again. Just a very dark place. But Jim Jones, real quick, was vetted by the top leadership of the political establishment in the San Francisco Bay Area. I mean, he had sheriffs, he had governors, judges coming to his events. He was best friends with Harvey Milk, so their stars kind of rose together, even though he's been excised from Harvey Milk's bio that was written post Jim Jones. But I'll just I'll jump off. But so Jim Jones, I mean, he's a weird guy, but I want to say also his cult was not Christian. They were militant, leftist, communist revolutionaries. He met with members of the Communist Party. They were literally affiliated. They went to Russia. I mean, all kinds of stuff, and directly announced they're communist. And I mentioned to these guys and gals in the show opener, at one point, he had extra Bibles, ran out of toilet paper. He had his parishioners wiping themselves on the leaves of the Bibles that he left in the toilet. So this is this guy's, but socialist, communist revolutionary, vetted and feted by the press, the man to know. He's going to bring in votes. I mean, and just I'll say this last thing is so 1978, December 2nd event, People's Temple Benefit Dinner, a struggle against oppression. And we have Willie Brown, Master of Ceremonies, Dick Gregory, Dick Gregory, the comedian, as keynote speaker, Harvey Milk, Harvey Milk also on the bill, Carlton Cordet, Supervisor Carol Silver, High Regencies, and then you have Mayor, this, that, and this was when the massacre happened. So this event was set up. Nobody showed up because it was right at the same time of the massacre. But anyways, just throwing that. Oops, I'm throwing that out.
It's great that it happened at the same time as the massacre. Holy crap! What wah wah? You know, it's like a dud for the media.
All the people associated with that. You look at the
Wow.
list of endorsements. I mean, dude, like you look at the list of endorsements. I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but these are all the endorsements for this event that happened the
Oh
same
wow!
day as the
Wow.
massacre. Look at this. I mean, this guy's
Those listening, it's got to be like over 50 names.
and
on
these
there.
are all
What book is
big.
that from?
This is from Colt City.
That's it. I had to interview that guy.
I just got it.
I have that interview. I'll try to bring it up.
Yeah. So, but
I'll have
anyways,
to repost it after this.
yeah.
Awesome.
But
And it's the Colt City is important because it's a picture of Milk and Jones next to each other. The event of Jones' supposed death was November 18th, 1978, and then Milk and Mayor Moscone were killed on November 27th, 1978 by Dan White, who went to jail, and his best friend is, of all people, guess, Sirhan. Wow, what a shocker. So the guy who's supposed
One big club.
it's one big club. And Dan White is from the military, right? Programmed to kill. He's from Vietnam. So these timing events are really incredible. But the book that I looked at today was Jonestown, a CIA experiment by Meyer. I've also looked into a researcher by the name of John Judge. I highly recommend people look at both of those. And I'm going to read the intro to the book. Was Jonestown a CIA experiment? And it's Meires is the guy's name. But he starts up, the combined genius of Edgar Allan Poe, Aldous Huxley, George Orwell, and Stephen King could not have conjured up a more bizarre, intriguing fiction. But what sets this story apart is that it's true. And so it's all incredible. And Jones had a very weird life. Going back to Branham, like I've done shows on these kind of white supremacist Midwestern preachers, and Jones is associated with this guy. I've done shows on Branham at all. It's just so strange. His arc and his connection. I mean, we can go into all that detail, but he had a background, and Myers makes the point that Jones was a CIA asset, so he's not like some kind of hireling or a agent, like a semi-agent. Like they said, Ferry's a CIA asset. He's not affiliated. He's in the CIA, much like Myers is saying that, and that he was brought into MK Ultra in the early 60s. So it makes sense that this process is ongoing. Myers says the night that the deaths happened was called the White Night, and he compares it to Kristallnacht in the intro of his book. It's kind of interesting in a lot of ways, but they're talking about how everybody's in a trance on that night. So there's a lot of information. And I've done shows, actually, one of my earlier shows was a guy by the name of Paul Morantz, who was a ex-Colt. He would sue Colts. He sued a Colt before Jim Jones. Kind of forgot the guy's name off the top of my head. But the guy literally put one of the people from the Colt put a top poisonous snake into his mailbox. And he opened the mailbox and it Paul Morantz had bit his hand, and his hand was desiccated. And when I went to meet with Paul Morantz, because I'm in LA, so we sat down, and he's passed away, unfortunately. Rest in peace. I just instinctively stuck my hand out to shake his hand, and he took his hand that was desiccated from the snake bite and put it in my hand. Like, this is what I lived, kind of. I think I didn't get it at the time, but I think that's what he was trying to impart to me, and that's the danger of this cult. And the guy who was the cultist before Jim Jones used the same technique Morantz did, which is putting the speakers and talking to people all the time through these speakers. And it was the same. So Jim Jones had kind of predicates or things that would happen. I'll try to find it, but Paul Morantz is another book. His title, I can't remember the name of the title, but another guy interviewed. So I've done Cult City in both of them. But I'm glad to be here. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.
This is wonderful. I'm glad that we can have this again, and we can still have more Manchurian Candidate, because it's forever unfolding. I mean, we're never going to find the bottom of this conspiracy. You know what I mean? So, okay, where do we want to start? So, Jamie, you gave us some basic pointer. You gave me some basic pointers, and so why don't we just start with group psychology and that whole idea, and then cults, and how do cults get good people? I mean, obviously, it makes no sense that good people would be gravitated towards people like someone who encourages you to wipe your behind with the Bible that they're preaching from. So anyway, yeah, please make sense of that.
So I think when people heard the Jonestown story, like basically people are just like, how did it get to this point? Like nobody could actually fathom how you could get from A to B when we're just seeing the end result, which is people drinking Kool-Aid or mass suicide, murder, right? So it goes from A to B. There's a formula for it, and in Project Paperclip, the Nazis didn't just come to America and just to Canada. Like a lot of them, they went to South America to start a lot of these cults, which were social experiments in MK Ultra. And so I think they had figured out a lot of the medicalized torture techniques in order to split minds as they're forming, and all these this kind of medicalized MK Ultra. But I think what they were always trying to do since kind of the 60s was like, how can we do this in a sociological social engineering way where we don't need to get these people from birth and traumatize them to form them a certain way. We can maybe get people that are like change people that are already formed into a person with their own thoughts and ideas and beliefs and values. And so when you look at a cult, they say intelligent, altruistic people are the most susceptible people to joining a cult, just like really nice people are susceptible to dating a narcissist or a psychopath, right? Like it's kind of the same psychology that draws people in. It's actually based on their goodness and their altruism and their idealism, and these are the kind of people that actually are kind of drawn into these ideas because they always start out as this kind of ideal, utopian, moral, ending poverty, ending discrepancy between people, and all these kind of really nice ideals that people think, oh, I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit for that, and I'm willing to participate to make that happen. And they normally, like I say, cults kind of go a bell curve, right? Because they start out good and they actually do accomplish some amazing things, like with the teamwork and stuff, and like you'll see that what they kind of start to accomplish, and then it kind of hits a top point where this is where the inversion happens, kind of at that 0 point, right? Where it's like then all of a sudden once they've got them at this like great group cohesion doing something amazing, then it kind of starts to turn, right? Like in a martial arts kind of a sense, like you're kind of turning the force upon itself and coming down this way where it's like, okay, now I'm going to start inverting, little bit by little bit, just like when you date a psychopath or a narcissist, it's like it never starts out with them being a complete psycho, right? It's always a slippery slope. It's always a little testing of the boundaries. It's always a little bit of a betrayal and then you don't leave, and then it gets a little worse until finally like somebody's like a complete full-on psycho trying to kill you, right? So you start to see this theme psychology with cults, and what they do is they start to invert the social values, right? And so social engineers, whatever people want to call them, the Satanists, the evil ones, like people who want to create this kind of satanic world order, they're always trying to see how they can invert morality, right? And so what they'll do is they'll find ways to do it in like a really subtle way where they're just slowly, giving all the power over to the leader who is unquestionable. It becomes based on what they say because of who they are, not because what they're saying is true or right or good or anything like that. And then as soon as they start in training people, it's almost like a Pied Piper where it's pace, pace, lead. Like in hypnosis, we say pace, pace, lead. Like first you have to resonate with a person and then you can start leading them, right? So this would be like a psychopath kind of love bombing you and stuff and getting you attached and then kind of, taking you somewhere you wouldn't normally go, right? So this is what cults do. And they're always trying to invert values. And so a lot of the experiments was actually finding out how they could get people to change their values. And a lot of it's really simple things like cognitive behavioral therapy, where it's the triangle of think, feel, act. And Henry Kissinger talked about this a lot, where he said, you don't just force people at gunpoint to go and do something. What you do is you make them think differently about it, and then they'll just go do it voluntarily. So, this is how they work, is they start to invert the values by making you think about things differently. And, a lot of what they were trying to do in a lot of these cults, that's why there's always the sexual abuse element. There's always the, the cult leader's the only one that everybody's having sex with. And so they're breaking those normal bonds of husband and wife, and then going against just any part of nature, which like, pedophilia is kind of like the bottom of nature, like where that's like against nature on all levels. That's what they're always trying to do, right? Is see if they can get people to accept that. And that's why you see all the sexual abuse in the cults. So I don't know, I'll just kind of stop there. There's a lot. I think there's enough to start on that, but I'll just pass it on now and you guys can kind of comment from there.
No, sorry, if you don't mind, like just talk a little about cults. So really, what's interesting to note is we have very, very few cults in America. Very few, most of the 20th century. Okay, the cults peak in the 1980s, right after Jonestown. This is the peak of cults in the United States, which is really interesting. 1970, they say 900 cults. 1978, 900 cults. 1984, 2002, we have some people estimating literally like, almost a million people in various cults. 1993, 3,000 to 5,000 cults. In the 2000s, 10,000 to 20,000 or 5,000, but basically there's international. So we're looking at massive increase in the number of cults. And I think that to understand this, I think we could broad brush, but primarily a lot of things. And Jamie, I'm not trying to like be nitpicky academic. No, but cults, we have to understand, okay, we're talking about extreme cults. There are many different cults that are operational in various ways that don't go necessarily to that point of abuse. Even, okay, no offense to anybody, AA can be like a cult, right? People get locked into that, and there's other things. So primarily, with the cult phenomena, real quick, we're looking at the science. What we talked about the AM radio show I did with Sean, and hopefully the article's going to come out. But this whole stuff was designed in the 1920s and 1930s because of radio to understand how you create different social groupings, how you intersect particular leadership on the ground to create cohesive networks, infiltrating things. And you have like Kurt Lewin and all these other guys are looking at, well, the main thing they're looking at is how to change behavior, right? So it's all this psychological topology, looking at, the space of the individual, the psychological world of the individual mapped onto the physical geography, right? So and group topology. So this is massification. This is just an extension of that into creating these. So you could say obviously it's a more extreme extension. You're creating mass groups of people that are literally, they become almost like a mass organism. Because part of the cult thing is that you become part of this and your whole identity is externalized into the space of the cult, right? So so you can see many things where I'm saying this cult formation stuff has been a very important type of weaponry. Even online communities can become like cults in terms of this foundational stuff. And sometimes they turn into things like that, right? So it's really amazing. But I've been checking out like the 80s is like this huge 80s to 90s, just massive explosion of cults. Not that many in the 60s. Only 900 in 1970. There were like 10,000. So this is after Jonestown, which is very wild. You think, oh, let's join a cult, drink the Kool-Aid. Of course, Kool-Aid, reference to electric Kool-Aid acid test. Tom Wolfe's best-selling book ties into the Grateful Dead, ties into etc. So
CIA experiments ties
yeah,
into that. Yeah, right.
I'm glad you mentioned cults too, Hans, because right around that time, lest we forget, is the Symbionese Liberation Army, which literally is in Oakland, where Jim Jones had a lot of his followers were from that East Bay area, mostly African American, is my understanding. So I think Symbionese Liberation got wrapped up or whatever in '74, and that is just totally redolent with mind control techniques and doctors and Jolly and Wes infamously and some of these other guys. F. Lee Bailey, who's friends with William Joseph Bryan, is around during Jim Jones, like the progression towards Guyana, the trial of Patty Hearst is taking place, where they're talking about sensory deprivation, all these other things, behavioral modification, all this other stuff, where she literally changed her personality from a rich kid to a terrorist. So I think it's important and also the Bay Area is like a central area for so many cult stuff.
yeah.
Process
Just what.
Scientology.
So this is so important. Though. I just want to. Sorry to jump in, but MK Ultra moved from individual experimentation to mass experimentation in the 1960s to small laboratory experimentation through cults, right? So Patty Hearst, you have these environments and you have this group of people and you can have all these different types of cults. And this is a movement of that whole program into a different field, right? So I mean literally, I mean maybe not every cult, but there's so many of them that were literally they just come check on your it's like checking on your petri dish, man. Checking on your pet rock or something, they're just and they have so many dynamics they can play with because it's a closed system, right? And they can work on attracting and yeah, and it goes on and on. I mean, well, let's say that guy in California. California is what is it? Buddha Field. The Buddha Field, the guy would just he wearing a speedo. He would literally walk around like he comes on stage with his speedo, and he just was like, and it's just people he'd give him kundalini and they'd shake, and he just was like raping all these boys, and he made them like build this multi-million-dollar opera house. They performed one opera once, and then they just moved on. It's like this kind of thing, man. Like he just, but again, people's will is subservient. They have lost their will. They have their, and then you look at group dynamics. That can always be a difficult thing. Think about high school, right? The group dynamics, what group are you a part with? There you can feel it viscerally, right? But the group dynamics will also attract people prior to the indoctrination or hypnosis. You know what I mean? And so I think that's just something I want to mention.
So, what Jamie was saying about the inversion is what you were saying about William about flipping a rich kid to a terrorist. So like it's incremental changing of their belief system into being like, being a terrorist is right and true, right? Jamie, is that what we're like? The Overton window is shifted by the lead system that you were just mentioned. I forget what it is. Lead.
Pace lead. So you need
Pace
to
lead.
resonate with something before it will follow you, right? That's why people love bomb and stuff. Before, like, you have to attach by being kind of on the same frequency, and then you're like, we're the same. I'm like you, and then there's like trust, and your guard goes down. And like they use this kind of techniques in NLP, like mirroring and making you feel this sameness and resonance. And even like musicians understand like that resonance, right? Like where they start and cadence, right? Like starting to pace things. Like they do this in the military when people are marching all in a row in cadence to the hive, the group mind, and to turn off your conscious mind to start taking orders. And like I think we're all familiar here with like Madame Blavatsky or Alice B, like the externalization of the hierarchy. And so what they want to do is they want who they are to be public, and so they already do what they want hidden, but what they want is for it to be socially acceptable. And like the pedophilia or the pedosadism is like the strongest example of something that's inverted from the normal social natural order of things, where they want to not only come out and say they are doing this, but to actually be like worshipped for doing it as though it's like the ideal and better than not doing it. And that if people are against doing it, they're actually causing the harm and they're the evil ones for trying to stop it. And so like that is their end goal. And so that's really hard for a lot of people to say, how the heck could we even get to that point? But again, looking at somewhere like Jonestown, you think, how the heck could something like that happen? Well, it's these exact techniques. And I think Hans has a really good point about the timeline, because we also see in the 1980s, you know, a bunch of satanic ritual abuse people coming into therapist's office and you know, reporting. It's kind of like the stuff after Project Paperclip, and they brought all the people over and started all these programs. It's like a 30-year timestamp from, you know, when they started something to when there's the symptoms of it, or it's expressing itself, or you know, coming out and being noticed. And so I think it is important what Hannah said about the timeline, really showing like, why is this all happening at this time, even after Jonestown? And you know, looking at cults, like it's you know, sense of belonging is like right on Maslow's hierarchy, you know, like, and for some people, like attachment is more important than even food or shelter, right? It goes even above physical needs. So now that everybody's been atomized by the industrialization of Western society, where we're like all individuals, like people almost need like a surrogate group or family. So I think there's like more cults now where people have to say, well, where's my tribe? You hear people saying now, where's my tribe? Like, where's my tribe? I got to find my tribe. And like people are just longing for this type of tribalism. And, you know, so I think it's all really good points on that.
Jamie, real quick, entrainment. So you mentioned entrainment, right? And that's really important. A lot of people don't. I was on like scientific research project on entrainment, did like experiments. It was a big conference. It was an awesome like working group on entrainment. So entrainment, when you're describing, okay, so resonance, so that would be the overall phenomena, right? So that means you're creating a full congruency, right? But that is done. You mentioned the pace, right? So in NLP, mirroring, you start walking like them, you start moving, you even subtle body language, breathing patterns, speech cadence. These are all literally entrainment points. It doesn't just have to be sound, right? So you're entraining gesturally, and when something is entrained, it does a phase lock. Anything in nature, they'll phase lock, click, click. So you put two clocks together, they phase lock. So with a human being, obviously it's many facets, but when you're doing that stuff, it is 95%. I mean, unless somebody knows about it, it is unconscious. They don't know this person is doing this. They don't know. They're like, like that. And these things can be done subtly, but then when you build it up, you literally have this person. Basically, you can hypnotize them once you've gotten that, because you've entered into their personal space, including potentially their inner world, right? And so then you establish resonance, which is an overall congruity, right? And then this resonance and so this is an actual phenomena, right? You see like flock, right? They study flocks. I was reading all these papers, birds flocking. They're trying to do this with humans, right? And the flocking is a type of entrainment. So the group dynamics, you literally build up a group energetic field of resonance, which is based on multiple parameters, right? It's multivalent. It's not just, it's also the belief system. It's, what people wear. It's not whatever, how people, but it is essentially I mean, and this is, they don't talk about this in school, man, because you get sent to the principal's office and get paddled. Like I used to got we had a paddle that big. I just get beat, man. And that's, the way it used to be. But you've created now these structures. You create a modular field. So basically, so you use the word resonance, and you look at it in actuality, you are actually creating entrainment. So they move, you move. You're synchronized. Once you get that resonance, you start spreading this out. So it becomes a shared field. And the bigger it gets, the more powerful it gets. The more powerful it gets, the more power, the more energy the leader has. And he becomes more powerful. But it is actually like in actual reality, it's like a force field, right? I mean, what I mean is that, you've been around, like you go certain places and you walk in, this is really uncomfortable, whatever, right? You notice that, I don't know if you guys walk in a place and suddenly everyone turns around and looks at you, right? Why? But it's basically not saying it could be nothing about you, but your field spectrum, your particular energetic output, which is just from, what your will, and this can be cognitive, it can be so many layers, will interact with these people. It's going to jar, and they'll be like, what's this person doing here? Right? So, anyways, it's a very powerful phenomena, and it generates more power, and it generates more control, not less control over time. And then of course once you have established that, and then the inversionary activities shows you that you have literally sold your soul. You've lost your conscience. You know what I mean? You've crossed over, and
It's
you're not going to.
proof, right?
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to stop you. Sorry.
Sean, come on. No,
I do that all the time. Sorry.
no, dude, it's sweet. Yeah, I thought you were going to talk, but yeah, so that's just important to see
I
that.
can.
But I thought, again, Jamie is also bringing up that resonance and the pacing, because I mean, this is an actual phenomena,
Right.
and it's it's a phenomena of, this is what was studied in with the AM radio, is to mathematically group people, and then you have Gustav Le Bon, massification, the crowd, and the crowd obeys very different laws than individuals do. They literally have, people are almost like different, they're not normal human beings. You shift into something else, literally. So go ahead.
So Jim Jones also had that radio going. He had the speakers going all the time, and he's like talking in the microphone, and he's got their heads all the time going. Like, think about that like how they learned from AM radio to have that radio going. And in the military camps, they had these speakers that you couldn't turn off. Like, it was just broadcasting constantly. So I think that the AM radio and the massification is a huge point, Hans. I'm glad that you said that, because I'm sure that was in the mix of the formula for what was happening there in Jonestown.
I think they had hundreds of hours of that guy just rambling on, like, right? He would get methed out and just start blubbering. Like, I think they had, and that was kind of one of the reveals, is that he said, "Get Dyer out of here," or something like that, in one of those things. And that guy was a known intel asset. One of the things I just want to show some of these books, guys, because Hans brought up that Cold City book, which I can't recommend enough. It's really good. But
Who is
it's
that one by?
definitely
Cult City?
It's Daniel J. Flynn. I've had him on my show, so please check that out. And one of my favorite books of all time, which kind of overlaps with this, but has some of the themes you guys were just talking about, is Revolution's End by Schreiber. And I've had him on my show. This is like an old interview. But this is the SLA, probably the best book on the SLA, where he's just saying the whole thing was intel from the beginning to end. Like, DeFreeze was a setup, Sync K. But it goes into what's infamously about Hearst is the whole issue of how culpable she was for her actions. And you guys are talking about those themes, replacing and going in. Well, she was infamously kept in a closet, and then they would go in and so she's in sensory deprivation, away from her family. Then they would infamously go in and have her like repeat stuff like from a cult. Like, she would have, I forgot, they had like axioms or something like that. And then she was sexually abused and then left in there. And then they do it over and over again. And by the time she had Stockholm syndrome, and I forgot what her name was, but she was robbing a bank in downtown San Francisco. And so then when they went to court, and Jolly and West is in there, and F. Lee Bailey and all these other, there's like 3 MK Ultra doctors there. But I think they really kind of lost in court. They said she was, but it's because nobody knew what the techniques they were doing, right? They were all kind of secret. But highly recommend this book. And then the other one is Paul Morantz. I've done 3 hours of Paul Morantz, and he has this guy, I forgot his name, but his name was Chuck Dieterich, and it was Synanon, was the People's Temple group. And Dieterich did the same thing, where he had something, and you can see Synanon up there. But highly recommend this interview and this book, Escape My Lifelong War Against the Cults by Paul Morantz. So I've had all those 3 people on my show, and they all kind of tie into this whole Jonestown thing, this whole environment. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and just briefly, experimental data, experimental set groups, right? You can see the Patty Hearst, that's a very particular type of experiment, right? With advanced techniques and technology. Because if you don't know how to do that, you're not just going to brainwash someone like that. You got to know what you're doing. It's quite advanced, right? And Jim Jones, yeah, and Sean, like that audio going continuously. So you mentioned that the audio creates our environment we live in, right? So it's used, it's much faster than the visual sense, but it really maps our spatial world is actually mapped through sound more so than sight. And our balance, right? Our sense of balance, this, that. So sound actually is our, you could say subliminal for most people, mapping of the spatial. So once you take that frequency over, you get that, but you just see this potpourri of different techniques, and you can go through so many different cults, and you can see Jim Jones, like we just go down the list. But a lot of these, I mean, one of the telltale things is knowing some of these techniques and how they deploy it. And these are, again, experimental groups that, and then by the time after Jonestown, they've got a whole array of settings, technologies, different types of grouping of people, different demographic groupings, different age ranges, et cetera, et cetera. And this, I think the belief doesn't even really matter. It's more about these type of groupings that you're getting together, right? So this is data. This is literally experimental data. Not, I'm not saying every cult was like that, but many of them were. It's this textbook, like William, you said, it's like straight down the line. These are straight out of the CIA playbook, right? Guantanamo Bay. It's all this stuff. But there's many, many other experimental technologies, such as NLP, that are also being deployed.
So, Jamie brought up earlier the loss of will and how they're overriding the cult leader's will is now the will of the mass. So like they make the mass will and then they step into it as I am the decider, you know. But that was but and they're trying to entrain them to go against their natural instincts of survival. And this is the same that we saw in the Estabrooks document, where they were trying to train the trauma mind control victims to go against, like, to suicide themselves, be like suicide bombers. To like, there was those submarines that were scuttled that they didn't know how. Like, oh, whoops, it was sabotage on the inside of the boat that made the boat sink, and they were congratulating each other on what a fine job of mind control they did, but they were very hush hush about it. They weren't like exact, but this it goes to show that so our natural instinct of protecting ourself, go against that, invert that, and then you can do anything, right? But then there's also the natural instinct of protect my kids, right, Jamie? Is that so? Because that was a key element. Like he was telling them I heard the tapes. He was saying that it is right and true to kill your kids because they're going to come in here and they're going to ask questions. That's kind of how it went.
I have the perfect clip for you, Sean. It's right here. This is from Paul Morantz. He's going to play. He'll talk about the intro, and then it'll be Jim Jones convincing one of his followers that it's the right thing to do. So listen.
Thank you.
Yeah, 3 clips of 3 different groups, and it's if you don't believe that
You can hear that, right?
brainwashing exists, you may have a different opinion. You know, they say pictures.
That's the voice of Paul
worth
Morantz.
1,000 words. These 3 tapes may be more than my book because it's real. And so, first this is Jonestown, and the setting is before they take the Kool-Aid, and people are giving testimonials to Jim Jones, and one man says that he will lay down his life, and but not his daughter's. And then Jones gets the crowd to sort of convince him that he should kill his daughter, which he finally, if you listen carefully, he says that she'll die too. And then everyone starts celebrating. It's pretty hard to believe. When I used to teach at USC, I actually found that my audience, it was very hard for the students to listen to this tape. So I kind of warn you.
Father went on and on into the night, his congregation scared and confused and worried. He needed them now even more. They responded often with shouts of praise and murmurs of amen, and lined up to come to the microphone to testify to their love for him and their love for social.
This is Morantz after he got bit by the snake. That's him in the hospital. And huge, it was a huge like media uproar.
A love so pure they would do anything to prove it, commit suicide, even kill their children.
How do you feel about you may die tonight? Dad, from 68 to 69, the captain sent me to Vietnam to fight a war that I didn't know anything about. I had no principle to die in that war. You have saved my life so many times, Dad. Now I'll have no life of my own. I'm living on your time. I would die for you right now, Dad. I'm willing to face the front line with you right now. Thank you, Dad.
Since I've been here, all I've seen is the beauty of socialism, and I feel that my life is fulfilled. And if death comes, it's no big deal to me because I've already lived my life just being here with the family. Thank you, Dad.
Thank you. We were trying to light candles, not push buttons.
And I'm prepared to die for this family if I have to for freedom. Thank you, Dad.
I'm also prepared to die after 44 years of not being able to contribute anything to this life or finding any point or reason for it at all, and not being well known at all. There sure would be no glory in it. But for the children here, for the freedom, as long as there's one remains on this earth that isn't free, none of us are free. And I'm prepared to give my life if need be. No, I'd give mine in the place of hers.
And hold it now. He walked out on a sensitive point that maybe you think about it. They brought up a sensitive question, and you may not understand the gravity of that question, but all of our children have faced this. We went through white nights, so they'll not be hurt by it. We haven't had any child cause us any difficulties by facing this kind of thought.
Jerry, the question.
For people who might have missed that, Jones mentions these white nights. This was the final white night. So there were all these test runs too, leading up to the events of November 18th, 78. So that's what he mentioned there. We've been through these white nights.
Would be if the fascists were coming up the road right now and we were going to lay down our lives and fight for it. You say you would give your life for your child's, but would you leave it for the fascists to have? What would you do in that case? If it came to that, I would have to take her life.
Fine. You understand that? You understand that? Will you? But she's so old. She fight. How old is your child?
11.
And she passed the age. We fight at 11. It's under that we consider that. She would take up a cutlass and fight till she was dead. Unless it came to an overwhelming invasion, then we would gently put them to sleep, which we have, but they never know what hits them. We are already prepared for that. A people who are really loving and a father who's genuinely compassionate is prepared for all such emergencies. But you don't do that as long as there's alternatives in which you can make a mark. You don't do that unless there's alternatives. All alternatives are closed for you to make a mark against fascism.
Yes, I think you all should die tonight. This is our turn. I'm willing, Father, to stand with you all the way, just like I always have told you 3 years ago. Everything seems and will always be the same. I'm not changing.
You don't need to say. You don't need to say no more. I remember your fight.
I love you, Father.
I know you do.
I know some of my people and others, so I felt like they're gonna hate you. When you hate you, you hate me. I'll tell you the truth. I'm not gonna lie. You're the only father I have. It's the only family I have. I give up my brother.
I remember you fighting.
To you.
I remember when you sang, I never heard him. Sing it for us right now.
I'm going to sing it for you. days of my life. Ever since I've been born, I never heard a man speak like this man before. I never heard a man speak like this man before. All the days of my life, ever since I've been born, I never heard a man.
Just I just want to say, everybody that knows of the Mars Volta will
Yeah, sounds
will recognize that song because the Mars Volta took those lyrics and put it in their song.
from
They
the Jones thing.
Yeah, from this woman's song, like these are the exact. I've never heard a man speak like this man before. All the days of my life, I've never heard him. This is Mars Volta integrated that into their music. People should check out. I think it's their third album, maybe. The yeah. Anyway, but that so loving compassion is killing the kids. He said, "We are loving them. It's the most loving way for them to die. Everybody dies, and it's loving compassion." Right, Jamie? Is that so? It's the total inversion of the instinct to save your kid.
Right. And I think Carrie Olahe had talked about when she was being trained to kill, it was they would torture something and then she had to put it out of her misery to. So her saying was death is a mercy. Death is like a mercy, right? So she's doing something a favor by killing it. And I have my suspicions about some of these stories like Andrea Yates and these other mothers that killed their babies and stuff. Like, I think sometimes when I see those news stories, I think, were they thinking something like that? Did they realize they were part of, their husband works at Boeing or these other places and they're like, death is but a mercy. Like, I'm going to take my kids in the bathroom and drown them because I know what's going to happen to them if I don't. Like, I that's always kind of a suspicion to me when I see these things, again, going against the maternal instinct. And the paternal instinct and the maternal instinct, for anybody that has kids, like, and I don't have my own kids, but I have like nieces and nephews, like it's like that drive like overrides everything. And if people can't really understand how you're not thinking straight sometimes, like think about when you've fallen in love with somebody and your brain is like completely, it's like you're drunk or something, right? Like the decisions you make, it's completely different than when your brain's not in that state. And so when groups get together, there's like what Hans was talking about, like talking about it in kind of metaphysical terms, but it's actually really scientifically even measurable through like Herlian photography and stuff, like showing these energy groups when the actual auras of people are melding together and stuff, like they really are sharing information in their energy bodies. Like, and so, of course, when they have a cult, there always has to be the charismatic leader, and like charisma is a form of, calling it like animal magnetism, like it's an actual real biological electrical magnetic field that like starts to interact in the fields. If you want to do another show sometime, we can talk about how AI is being programmed to interact with those biofields, but that's another show. But for the I think one of the people in the audience put the mob mentality, and I actually just did a show about that. It didn't come out yet, but it's a coincidence. Because when people are in the mob mentality, they do things that they wouldn't normally do in the group. Like, there was the one movie, The Accused, with Jodie Foster, where she was gang raped by a group of men in a bar, where like none of them had ever done anything like that in their life. And how did they all end up doing that spontaneously in the back of a bar one night? Like 15 guys. It's because there's once that thing kind of gets unleashed, it just takes over them like a hive. It's like they're completely afterwards, like, what did I do, right? Like there was no kind of pre-planning or anything. It's like a very serious thing. And I just wanted to go back to thinking about the Patty Hearst stuff, where they were saying like, is this person responsible? But then you compare that to the Manson case, where that was kind of the first case in history where they were saying, Charles Manson is the person responsible for these other people's behavior, which was like, in law, I don't think that had been done before, where somebody was legally held accountable for, giving orders to somebody, because it's kind of the opposite of in society, what would be considered acceptable, that until it was such a crazy case like Manson, where people are like, oh no, we can actually charge him for what other people have done and say they're under mind control. And of course, with DID and MK Ultra, that's always the question, is where is the accountability? Like, if you're completely unconscious and you're given scopolamine and you're, completely traumatized and in an altar, like, are you responsible? is the order follower responsible? And like people have different thoughts on that, but it's always that question about accountability. And with the cadence and stuff and those biofields going together, like it's really interesting that the lady in that video started singing, because when people sing, it puts them into their right brain, where they start doing that right brain bonding that, you know, Fiona Barnett had talked about too, like they do on purpose with military units and stuff. And so once you're in your right brain, you're, you know, in the suggestible part of your brain, you're more likely to be in a mob mentality, you're more likely to act from emotion and not be rational, you're more likely to be, you know, driven by your inner child. And so if you go to like church services and stuff, they always sing together in a hymn, just like they did, or even what Jones was doing with the speakers, like the psychic driving, but they're everybody's listening to it together, right? So it's like, and then after they do the singing, like in church, that's when they start giving the sermon, right? Because they've put you in that receptive state of resonance, and then they're going to insert the program, which is the talking part, right? And so you see this in the military too. It's like, okay, we're going to do some rounds of drill on the drill square, and then you're going to get your orders after, because you're just in a receptive state, you're all on the same page, you've all been marching together, you're a unit now. And the last thing I want to mention, sorry, was the automation. And so when they start to make things automatic, like in the Jonestown, they were doing the test running and stuff, right? Because automation means that you're running from your right brain, which is why they train you in the military, or like if you're training first aid or emergency services and stuff, they have that state dependent learning where they're making it like a muscle memory to just unconsciously go and do stuff. And so when you think about things like COVID, it's like they were already, you know, that was a test run, right? So they're doing things, getting people to work together and see how those dynamics play out. And I think a lot of that was all tested in these different cult groups. Anyways, I'll just stop there.
That's really fascinating, and I'm intimidated. I don't know what to say now. No, I'm not. It's great just to connect to this. No, you know about biofields, man. Wow, you listen to my show. I have my one fan. No, I'm just kidding. But no, these things. I mean, you know, it's very important to understand that these are, you know, a lot of things have been converted into the domain of the esoteric, of, you know, new age, of this and that, and of magic. People really know what they're doing, but this is a fact. Okay, just because it's invisible doesn't mean it's not a fact. But this stuff, once you tie this in with all these other corollary factors, so I wanted to mention is that, so you know, we have experimental data. You can look at all these as different sets of types of programs or experiments. You know, and Manson being very, very important, because Manson was selected for sort of a sociopathic, narcissistic street hustler, whatever. He was given LSD by his parole officer, who happened to be experimenting with rats, giving them LSD and meth. Most people forget there was a massive meth epidemic right after the Summer of Love. It was the summer of meth. And this is part of it too. Drugs is also another part of it. But basically, Manson, you have this charismatic leader, you have this, that, you know, you're using this as one type of a template. But so entrainment, you have leading, right? So when you're creating a structure of, really, in a sense, you're creating an entire environment that the person lives in, an entire ecology of themselves. So this takes time. So this requires, and you like singing, group activities. Now, look, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you got a rock band, even the military, you guys got to have to be synchronized. Period. You know, so this doesn't mean that just doing things in synchronization is bad, right? But you have various activities, you have songs, you have things, you know, this, that, and you're creating more and more power. So you have to generate enough energy in the resonant, you could say in the governance signal of the leader, you can steer people, but to make them flip, right? The sacrifice part means the entrainment has gone to the point where this is now, it's like it's like a satellite. It's orbiting. It's under the thrall. It's enthralled, literally enthralled and magnetically almost attached and governed. So from that, you know, this time, but if you do that too quickly, you break it, right? You can't just jump. You have to build up a lot of things, and this is happening. Daily rhythms, what time you wake up, what time you go to bed. These are also all these things factor in. It gets more complex. But so that's one of the things, you know, we see is these various aspects. And so one of the things, now going back to the sacrifice, so a number of cults. There's this lady, I think it's Children of God, not the big one, but she wore kind of like look like a hijab, like Muslim type of scarf. It's all African American church, right? And they had a church. They had little secret basements where they locked the kids in. But she had, maybe 20, 30 people in her church, right? And there's one of her parishioners had an affair. She made him cut his dick off, and it got infected, and he literally cut his dick off in front of everybody. And this is not a huge, that you think about that. He cut it off his own dick. Because she said, she sold, and they have the video of it. If thine eye offend thee, cut it off. If thy left hand offend thee, your member has offended me. Here's a knife. Cut it off. He did, man. And so, to me, that's really one of the extreme levels of initiate control. So it's not only, so you have to establish, though, the dynamic system has to be sort of steered in certain ways. You have different subsects, you have different, maybe some tension, you play with that. But anyways, so I want your quote from, and so Jim Jones, this degradation and sexual control, he made a guy have anal, two guys have anal sex they were not gay, in front of the parish to prove, he would strip men down, buttocks, stick stuff in there. I mean, on the pulpit, man, so he would sexually abuse, especially he liked to make men have sex that weren't gay, and he did not let the married couple stay together. So that's sexual control. And then and William, this is an important one too. That example of a higher tier cult with similar principles is that Odyssey study group, right? That huge thing that was that they had, people were multimillionaires, this thing in Manhattan, and they had all this crazy sexual stuff. This was a huge thing, and they were very powerful, actually.
I had that guy on too, a guy who came out of that, the Manhattan Billionaires Club, or I forgot the name of that book. I've had a lot of cult people on my show. It's really
you're showing you're not getting just the salt of the earth like Jim Jones. You're getting the upper echelon. You're getting the lawyers, the doctors, the movers, the shakers, the people that got it together, not the lost souls that are just waiting for Charles Manson to give them a back rub. Hey, baby, I'm going to give you a back rub. And then one of
the things about Jones is involved in all this sexual degradation, but that's what he was into. Flynn said he got busted was cruising for dudes in bathrooms, like he was in a bathroom in San Francisco. So he had an arrest.
Just like Fauci.
Yeah, was Fauci busted for cruising?
He wasn't busted, no, but he was cruising. He was doing
he was a bathroom.
There was a whole bathhouse thing with Fauci. I don't know. I'm not gonna. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Don't surprise me. Well, you said it, not me.
Yeah, I know. I said it. Yeah, but it's my opinion. It's not the truth.
I think it's true or false.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, William.
No, it's okay. But that's Flynn. That Flynn said. So not only was Jones imposing that, he was a partaker, and Flynn said that was his preferred sexual approach.
So if you read Kurt Barker, he wrote a book, Blood Drinking, Cannibalism, and High Adept Satanism, and in that he was discussing how the generational pedophile Satanists, that book there, yes, it's everybody should get that and read it. He's seen them and he's heard them say these things, that they raise their children to be gay. They're from the beginning, and they say that normal heterosexual sex is gross and nobody does that, and it's wrong, and it's true and right and good to do this with your own gender. And they would dress Kurth as a female, and his name was Kathy when he was he was on camera, and they would film him and they would abuse him on camera. But they would raise their own to be completely gay. And so then Jim Jones is that, right? And he's seeking to invert the sexual drive of his people, which is the exact opposite of your true self, is to invert. Nobody's gonna get hard for something they don't like. You know what I mean? But to perform for him, I don't know. Like, I don't know how it works, but it what. But in any case, it's like it's an inversion of the true self, and that is what the Satanists at their core were doing, and that's with the trauma-based mind control is giving total inversion of morality and truth, and they're imposing that on the outer world. And what Hans was talking about, the guy chopping his own dick off, parents are encouraging their kids to change gender and chop off their parts. And it's like next level of like, oh, instead of chopping themselves, they chop their own kids. It's like circumcision as well. It's another level of, but the blindness, once you've hurt your kid, you're blind and you cannot accept. And we see that in circumcision. I talk about that a bunch. And that also, I'm sure, went into Jim Jones's thinking, like, you must kill your kid. That is right and true. Right, Jamie?
If you don't mind.
Oh, please, Hans.
Yeah, so it's basically getting somebody to do something so that they cross a point of no return. So like it's like you're forsaken at that point, like you're irredeemable. And so even whatever people believe about their religious beliefs, like you wouldn't even ask for forgiveness. You hate yourself so much, like, you know what I mean? Like that they make you do something. It's the same with pedophilia. Like you can't be an ex-pedophile. Like there's no coming back. Like once you've done that, you can never undo what you've done. Like there's no coming back from that. And so that's why it's such one of the main tools they use for like getting people to the dark side or blackmail, is like you're doing this thing that like you actually can't be redeemed from. Like you can't just be like, oh, I quit pedophilia, like, like please accept me back to, like, it just is, it's a point of no return. And so they do that, obviously going against the drive to like, that's why they made at Jonestown them kill the children first, because of course the parents aren't even going to want to live after that. Like it's a point of no return. You've already gone so far. You want to be dead just to not be alive to experience what you just did. So it's like it wouldn't have worked the other way around. They have to do the children first. And again, we were talking about Sean, it being like symbolic of handing your son over, going back to the Bible, or like Moloch, or just this ceremonial handing over of your son, whether that's to hand them over to the medical establishment, whether it's to hand them over to a group of pedophiles to get into an elite club. And William talked about some of these more elite groups joining cults and stuff, and like they have different parts inside of them that are susceptible. Like the narcissism has a little wounded child behind it, and that's the thing that gets these people into these elite groups of like wanting to belong and being elite. And like they have these other kind of wounds, like different than maybe the street kid kind of wounds of abandonment and those kind of things. They kind of have their own, like they'll have everything material and successfully, but like they have this, shame-based child part inside that drives the narcissism and that psychopathic, sociopathic kind of behavior. So like they're susceptible to that being activated to pull them into one of these groups, right? And just one analogy I wanted to share with Hans about the pace lead is a really good way to think of it, is like trains on a track. So they get the train on the track, it's getting momentum, and then when a train changes tracks, you don't really feel it, you don't really know it, just you're on a different track, you didn't even realize that it changes underneath. Like that's how they do the cult indoctrination, or you know what I mean? Like you're on a track, you think you're going somewhere, and you don't even notice that something else has come from behind and switched the track. It's like completely in the backdoor subconscious. Like it's not, if you knew there's a huge sign that said train crossing, go right or left, you might not go. But if that track just changes, you don't even know you're on a different track. And that's kind of how I try to like imagine how they change what the group thinks it started for. And I also use the analogy of like Aikido or martial arts, where you use the force against itself. And so you see this with like the women's movement or something, like where it'll start out really good, have good intention, and then it gets to like a certain point where it kind of almost redirects back into the very thing that it was meant to fight, and it just becomes that very thing in a new form back at itself. So you're kind of becoming the exact thing you meant to fight in the first place, and it's like, it's the same technique they use. I don't know, did that answer your question, John? Or
Yeah, and we see the way that the transgender thing, like, I mean, it started as like we gotta protect women, and now it's like if you don't let some dude jerk off in a woman's bathroom, then you're the problem.
you're the
It's
persecutor.
right. It's totally inverted, and so they like
Right.
the Satanists won in that respect. I mean, so far we haven't turned it back, but that's so they're kind of trying to externalize that their inversion of everything and have us believe that the inversion is right and true. So that's what they were doing with the COVID thing is, I mean, it says on the box, does not protect against virus, and people would wear it on their face to protect against virus because Fauci said so, because he's like the leader of the cult and they got a bobblehead. And so it's, they're going against their own logic and their own understanding. And then they're told that you got to protect grandma, so put your kid in danger. And that again is an inversion. You protect your kid. Grandma already lived. It's on many levels the inversion. I think that's really important with the psychology of this type of thing. All cults are looking to invert your natural set, and then once they invert that, then they can wield you.
Well, I want to read just to show this very graphically, maybe not shockingly, but how Jim Jones went from having a Christian church, right? And this is from one of his sermons. Throw aside religion. The reason America has not freed itself of racism, the reason the women in America only make half the salary of men is because of the Bible. The Bible is the root of all of our problems today. Racism is taught in it. Oppression is taught in it. Otherworldliness is taught in it. If the Bibles would disappear, if religion would disappear, then we would do something to make this ecological system a better world. That's a little weird. We would clean up the nation. We would clean up the world. We would do something about the here and now. But the Bible says by and by. When the morning comes, there's going to be a beautiful city, or God's going to come and down and raptures people, take them up. Bull. Jim, in the same sermon, he called God a dirty old man that ought to be raped, a fart in a breeze, a dumb sky god. Quote, when I say God damn it, I guess I can damn it because I'm God. So
Wow.
look at this from the church, and he's so I just chance upon this, but they're wiping their butts with he is denouncing religion top to bottom. But so the inversionary stuff, just one thing with the Satanism was also introduced deliberately because it's a very powerful medium to invoke these processes. Okay. So the finders, those dudes, were they actual Satanists? So it's part of what they're doing. And so part of this is, William Casey said, former director of the CIA, is like, well, we were studying all this advanced cyber warfare and this and that, and really, it just didn't really work out. We didn't, all this stuff. It was just a bunch of hype. But the one thing that worked is multiple personalities, splitting the personalities through traumas, and also putting in. So this inversion is also a type of splitting your personality, especially if you're doing something very graphic. This is creating a fissure, right? Potentially may not create a new multiple, but this stuff can be worked on. So, and that's exactly what we've seen deployed, right? So all this stuff is generated through a lot of study, a lot of experimentation in order to be utilized on the macro scale, the national scale. This is a very different level. Okay. We see, of course, enforced social rules. We got the 1927 flu, whatever. But I'm saying that, so this type of DID, mind creating separate identities, separate sub identities, you don't have to be like have 150 different personalities. This can be even invoked and programmed in a relatively low grade way to a high grade way. If you're cutting your Johnson off, man, you got some programming going on. I think so, but that's the level of how this can happen in the sense, you split and you keep splitting and splitting every time you do the inversion, you split again, you get further and further away. It's not necessarily you're going to have sub personalities, but you're splitting yourself and it gets harder and harder to get back to yourself, even just psychologically, psychically, because you've split it, and it's a road paved with blood, semen, and evil. And you don't want to walk down that road, so you want to forget about it.
Just an incidental note. I was in Northern Virginia after that woman cut off her boyfriend's personal things. And
Lorena Bobbitt?
Yeah, Lorena Bobbitt.
Right.
I used to walk by her salon to get home to my apartment back in 1995 or something like that. It's too funny, so I'd like to see that. Here's Jim Jones saying, "I am God, there is no other."
Desire. All that freedom embraces, all that justice embodies, everything that sensitivity imbibes, that is what your God is. And I must say it is a great effort to be God. I wish it upon another, but no one else in the particular stratum of the class consciousness that we are evolving in has the faculty that I do. When they do, I'll be glad to hold their coat. In the meantime, I shall be God, and beside me there shall be no other.
Yeah. You get that lead up too, like
Yeah.
those other people I'm it, but I am God, and there shall be no other.
And that's hypnotic, right? So they go to a church and they end up friggin' communist revolutionaries that hate God and think Jim Jones is God. And this can happen very quickly. And it's not even, it can be arbitrary what you switch people to. But I think the satanic stuff being part of this rollout, being a strong undercurrent in the 1960s, right? So the satanic stuff was really, there was a huge blooming of the occult, of the satanic. It was mainstream, especially like in England. I mean, it was popular. Let's go to a satanic orgy. Okay, honey. Like it was normalized. It was part, you know what I mean? It was not, it was sort of something you just get into. Oh, we can freak out. And, seriously, I mean, there was a lot of this. And even I just watched the movie The Trip. Have you seen that horrendous waste of celluloid?
Yeah, with the guy from the biker
Dennis
movie.
Dennis Hopper and Peter
Right,
Fonda.
right.
This whole movie is just about an acid trip. It is super psychedelic.
It's very stupid.
But there's all kinds of satanic stuff embedded in there. Lots of it, but it's almost subliminal, right? It's there. It's there. And this is part of it. And it was attractive. People got attracted by the occult. They got attracted by Satanism. Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page is doing it. Man, Aleister Crowley's cool. He rocks, Ozzy
Yeah,
rocks him.
okay.
But I'm saying like these cults develop and the satanic thing can be spread. And just like I've talked about this with multiple people after research, and it's finding these huge dumps of pornography in places where kids hang out. Like we used to ride our dirt bikes, and just massive, there'd just always be new porn there. It was in the middle of the woods, right? And I've heard this from people all over the country, at least a dozen, about these porn drops, and even having like dumpster where it's all brand new magazines. They would go and take them and sell them, but they're always in a place the kids would be. And this all over the nation. That's an example of entering something into that. And that's a minor version of an inversion.
And pornography is warfare. They use it as warfare, just a note. Anyway, Jamie, do you have something to say about that?
I was just laughing that Bobbitt had a salon. Like, would you trust her with some scissors or like a hot shave? Like, I don't know. I just don't think, I don't know. Like, would you go there? I don't know. Like, anyways, but yeah, just the comment on Hans, like, the fact that these people, like, he was actually recruiting them out of the inner city, Jim Jones, and it was under the guise of a Christian church, and people that did want to be like a good Christian, like those were the people that were originally in the group before it kind of got transferred over to Guyana. And so again, it's that perfect example of inverting it, but it's it's the exact opposite of the. He didn't go down to the Church of Satan and say, hey, do you guys want to wipe your ass with the Bible? Like, he went and he started out with people that would never fathom doing that, to getting them to do it. And so the more you invert something, and this works in MK Ultra too, the altars have to be diametrically opposed, and that's what keeps them dissociative, right? They can't be like just a few notches over in personality. They have to be like, really black and white opposites, and that's what keeps them separate. And so there's a book by Robert J. Lifton who wrote about, how did ordinary people become Nazis, going and working, doing these horrible things, and then going home and eating dinner and playing with their kids, right? Like, so they'd have a, just kind of a persona where they could go in, they could do a certain thing, come back out like never happened, going into a different stage. And it's just this, he called it the protean self, which is not like a dissociative identity, but it's people can actually do that. And we all kind of do it in a little bit of a way when we go work somewhere or something, right? We have a little like different personality that we have for different scenarios. So then there's the concept, and this kind of ties to Patty Hearst too, is of, betrayal blindness. And so this happens also when people are dating like a psychopath who's always the greatest person in the beginning, right? They're going to resonate, they're going to love bomb you, and then they're going to invert, and start being like how Jim Jones is acting in that video, saying, I'm God. And of course he's inverting it right there, saying like, I'm willing to do it, as a service. I'm really a martyr. It's not about me. Like, somebody has to do it. And I guess I'm just the most generous, altruistic one to take this upon myself. And so, so the way betrayal blindness works is once you bond and you believe you need the relationship, then that's when you start blocking out things, and whether it doesn't have to be full-blown dissociative amnesia, but you're just not putting that into your thinking process. You're kind of not looking at this and that. You're just focusing on the thing that you want to be true. And so once somebody does that intermittent reinforcement, and that's why these cults like love bomb, and then they do really horrible things, because that's puts people in a shock state, and then they start blocking that out. And then because they have the intermittent reinforcement, they'll start having more of a compulsion to please and be a better order follower, and that can just be exploited by the charismatic leader. And so you can see how, in the end, Jim Jones getting these people to be like the exact opposite of the original way that he would have recruited them from was part of what kept them blind to seeing what was going on. Because like you'll see this even in people in relationships. Like, I've worked in social work for a long time, where like people have actually let their partner abuse their kids, and you think, how would a mother let their partner abuse their kids? And it's because the mother goes into a type of like Patty Hearst thing with the abuser, where they're literally handing their child over, and it's not something they want, but like they actually get into that same kind of like anxious attachment to please, where to them being rejected would feel like death, that they're actually willing to do something that they would have never done on their own, but it can go that far. So yeah, what you described with him doing that, it really kind of shows like, this just sort of, even if it's not dissociative, it's just betrayal blindness, where you're like, you're not seeing that when you talk to the person. You're not seeing you're not objectively able to see Jim Jones anymore. Just like when you're dating somebody, because I worked with women in domestic violence and stuff too, and like it'll be like years before they can get away, and you're thinking, how are you like dating somebody who's trying to blow your car up and stuff, and then going back to them? Like, you can't fathom why people would act that way. But it's like they really are under mind control, like a type of emotional traumatic mind control, where they actually can't have a will of their own and think. It's like that mental slavery, where even if the door's open and they're offered help, they can't actually take it, because they're mentally enslaved by this type of brain trauma with the intermittent reinforcement. And so like I really see that in the Jim Jones stuff, like, and same with David Koresh, was telling everybody sex is so evil, but like, I'm willing to have sex with everybody's wife just to take one for the team, and I'll do the dirty deed so you guys don't have to, right? And you're thinking like, how are these people actually this stupid? But it's because it's not their thinking part of their brain. It's their little inner wounded child with anxious attachment and betrayal bond and all this other things that are being activated. It's absolutely not a rational person sitting there debating how ridiculous what this person says, and I think Jim Jones is like, I mean, you couldn't have made this guy up. You couldn't have made up he's like, you couldn't even have made up a evil villain if you were a team of producers. Like, how could you make this guy up? He's so perfect,
Yeah. Whoa.
Like, I don't think you can beat Jim Jones. I don't know.
So, just real quick, you said that you just read a book about the hypnotism book, Esther Brooks' Hypnotism, Oh no, you heard a podcast or something saying that was written. It was letters written to an RCMP officer instead of the military, and where they wanted to go against the survival drive and also against the paternal maternal drive. Is that something that you wanted to make sure we talk? Oh, you're muted here. One sec.
I wish I knew you were going to quote me on this because I have the book right here, but I don't know which page it was on.
Oh,
In
okay.
Esther, yeah, sorry if you would have told me. I don't think I can find it right off the
What's
fly,
the
but
name of the book?
definitely-
What's the name of the book?
It's called
Hypnotism.
Murder of Time.
Oh, okay.
It's a guy in Canada, actually, who I'm just about halfway through it, and he was taken in Ontario. He doesn't, as far as I've read in this book so far, he doesn't remember being put through gate program or MK Ultra as a child, but he was taken and kidnapped in a van in Canada, in Ontario, and he was put through some like light MK Ultra, electroshock, scopolamine, and and so he kind of has written his testimony about this. So I'm trying to just read it because I try to read everything Canadian because there's a lot of Canadian stuff out there. But he was saying, like, in his research of what they were doing and why they did this to him, that he read the Esterbrook stuff, and that a lot of people quote Esterbrook's talking about we can get people to do stuff against their will, but it was actually written to an RCMP, and it's Canadian police, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. It's not American, and so I thought that was really key. And this other book, I really want to recommend it too, because it's also Canadian, MK Ultra and the GATE program. Because actually, I think Canada was a way bigger hub for MK Ultra than maybe even the States, because it's so easy to just hide stuff here. Like, people aren't even suspicious of it. They had people out on farms. They had mental institutions. They were in places like Winnipeg, Manitoba, Brandon, Manitoba, like the native reserves, military bases, which are all really close in Canada, coincidentally. And so, anyways, it's really, I think they hit a lot more MK Ultra programs in Canada. Yeah, McGill, that's the kind of one they got busted for publicly and had to admit. But actually, this book goes over a lot of the other institutions that were using kind of little small farm towns, and I think they were hiding way more MK Ultra, and still to this day still are doing it in huge numbers here, like, that I think has never really been acknowledged. Like, they kind of act like, oh yeah, we outsourced a couple little things, to McGill University and stuff. And I think Canada was like, I think even today people are so unsuspecting of this stuff. I think it's going under the radar way bigger here than people know.
Well, Canada doesn't have the Constitution to protect them. They are under the Queen and have to do everything that she says, and she owns all the swans. So, I mean, you have to do whatever she says, and it could be anything.
Well, and in Canada, they also made what's called the National Research Council. And so they would have joint national research bases, which were kind of part of the military, but not really. So they're not under military law. And so they would bring, these joint research council places, which are military bases. They just don't call them military bases for legal reasons. It was a legal loophole where they could bring like American or British soldiers onto Canadian soil, because your political government rights go with your country of citizenship. So, but then when you're in the military, you're under martial law and you don't have the same rights that you would in your country. But so when they bring somebody over to Canada on an American over to a base on Canadian soil on the British run side of that, it's kind of a loophole for them to do joint national research, which can be biological germ warfare. And you can look at the whole history of them doing that with Frederick Banting and insulin, and then starting to use insulin in the psychiatric wards. And that was all done on Canadian Joint Research Council bases. And so I've tried to research some of it. There's not a lot of books about Canada, unfortunately. There's a few really good ones, but I think there's way more going on here than what's really acknowledged, for sure.
I just want to expand a little bit out about you're talking about the betrayal and that kind of thing. I mean, I think there's another layer, because if you look at the initial research, going back to the psychological topology, going into Theodore Adorno, the Prince Radio Project, this also was about creating mass minds. But again, what we have is a very unique phenomena that never occurred in human history, except for maybe psychic tribes in Alaska or something. But basically, you have these relationships with people you never met. It's dispersed out of space, right? So you've lost your actual physical embodied grounding in your environment. Having a radio going on in the background, it's background noise, but it's changed your virtual psychological space. So you could be more connected to some radio fan in California or whatever, but people are not physically connected. So Adorno looked at this, using Lacan's like kind of neo-Freudian, very arcane, obtuse, opaque writings, like unless you're an initiate into, you know, Lacan, you can just throw the book across, you'll set it on fire. And you'll be like, why did I read this? I thought I was smart. Lacan, but actually, there's not a lot in there. But basically, the inner mirror is so, so, so important. The inner mirror, when you put the inner mirror, so it's a phase of childhood development where again the boy will mirror the father, the girl will mirror the mother. It's a basic process where literally you see yourself as the parent. This is the inner mirror. It's a subconscious identification, but it's very real. If this is not integrated, it continues throughout life. And so what Adorno discovered is that people listen to a pop song, their inner mirror is going to reflect the protagonist of that song, and they're going to identify subconsciously in their inner mirror as that. So this inner mirror phase creates a perpetual block between the person and reality, so to speak. Add this with self-esteem bullshit. It's like, oh, what is self-esteem? Self-esteem is what you think other people think about you. If I worried about that, man, I'd be drinking a lot more than I am, and I'm not even drinking. No, who gives a damn? I don't care, you know. But this is what we were trained, and I've said this on dozens of shows. Sorry to repeat it, but when I was a kid, school we have to wear these paper plates. It says I lack. I am loving and capable. Anytime someone says something mean to you, you have to tear your plate. This is your self-esteem plate. I remember like in the class, these guys, like they've got their whole thing with stars on it. I got like two little yarn threads and just a couple shreds of paper. Like it was just gone because people tore it apart. We don't like it. And so but anyway, so these are types of fragmentation and a confusing thought process with interjects. So people live through interjects. They live through media dialogue. They have these sub identities with media characters. And these can be very powerful identifications. Or with rock stars, right? I mean, these are powerful entrainments. Look at the town where everybody listened to like whatever rap music and all the kids got VD and like massive orgies, total sexual depravity just because of listening to rap. And this has happened. And so that's the power of this. So, anyways, just wanted to stress that this is part of a broader deployment. And we probably won't be able to get there today, but to take these small scale, medium scale, large, you could say, look at the 60s as large scale, medium scale, small scale to society wide. And that's where we're at now.
And Jonestown happened right after the 60s too, right? You know what I mean? The 60s was coalescing into Jonestown, and then it popped out into all those cults that you spoke of earlier too. And the SRA and all the rest. It's like a snowball rolling downhill and just gaining size as it goes.
So yeah, there's also like the concepts of that are really important. I think me and Sean might have done a show on that book called On Killing, when they were trying to see how they would get people to actually shoot their gun during war and the psychology behind that. I can't remember the name of the author of the book On Killing. It's a really good short book that I recommend everybody read. It's really well done. But he was really talking about the concepts of social role modeling, like having a drill sergeant is way more effective, right? And then also in a platoon, it's like the camaraderie and the group identity and like all of these concepts, where like you see this kind of played out in the digital space now. And so, like I'm going to have to ponder some of what Hans said. I don't know if I really fully got everything he was saying. It's really interesting though. But, thinking about this fantasy aspect of, people being into like cosplay now, or like even bonding with a porn star, like, and in their own mind, like thinking they have this like emotional relationship with this person. Right. And so, I think I kind of understand what you're saying, Hans, about this. You were talking about the radio coming out and people's, space being connected, but like maybe their biofields aren't like their auras aren't touching, but like you know, on a quantum level, like, you know, putting that out into the collective unconscious or subconscious, like, you know, on that frequency, you know, I think, you know, what you're saying is, you know, maybe even more intense to really think about the idea of putting something out that's exactly the same, whereas before things spread around by like being repeated and it changed a little bit each time. It wasn't like exactly the same in each person's mind, whereas when radio came out, it was like, no, it's like exact replication into a person's mind. And like what that did, just even on the you know, the thought field of the planet, of getting it in that many people's mind. And if you read Kurt Barker's books, he was talking about the Satanists really wanting to get everything mechanized, and that's why they were taping rituals and stuff, because when they do them exactly the same every time, there's like that frequency resonance in the quantum field of things being exact. And then so the more they could get things down to be perfectly replicated, and then of course with technology that's so easy now to do, that it's like, you know, I think as time goes on, that's exponentially becoming more and more, you know, quickly manifesting things by being able to just, you know, have that exact thing. And I always tell people to think about how powerful the right brain is. Like, think about any song you knew from your favorite album. Like you put zero effort into memorizing that. You didn't sit there and try to memorize it, and like you have it in your head forever. You can play it like a tape deck in your head if you want to play it. It's there perfectly. So like, imagine hitting that side of your brain, you know, which is what all these techniques and all these like, you know, psychology schools in the 60s and the 70s and all this positive psychology and the Esalen Institute and all these, you know, things. They were figuring out all these techniques for right brain programming. And the way that Fiona Barnett talked about some of her right brain bonding and stuff, you know, it's like really thinking about the human mind as a computer. And so your left brain is like a regular computer, right? And then the right brain is like a quantum computer. And so when they're putting stuff into the right brain, like putting a radio broadcast out, like that's like a quantum level, you know, hitting a bunch of people in their right brain, which is actually, you know, basically interdimensional, like, and then that manifesting into this, what is, I think is a lot bigger than maybe people realize, the actual power of that. And maybe it doesn't happen right away, like there's a time delay. So it's really interesting that you noted like the time this stuff sort of started to come to fruition based on when kind of the technology was actually discovered. It's kind of like that, you know, that because we're in a time space dimension, it's kind of like there's that element of time space to these things actually, you know, becoming present for us to notice them. But I don't know, just some thoughts.
Just real quick, it's you create essentially, since you're going far out, I'll go far out. So it's like an astral type of dream body, and these create shared entities to a certain degree. Okay. And so, but you're also really in an astral, subconscious dreamscape, but then you're connected, and it also creates some actual type of connections, but it is not physically embodied. So it, you know, there's, we can get, it gets kind of complicated, but it's literally like you have astral energy and you're creating a group thought form entity.
Would that be an egregore, Hans?
Egregore. Yeah, you could say, I mean, egregore, maybe not up to the level in egregore, but it's, you know, you're looking at basically, you know, you have a group resonance, and it's directed and guided. So everyone that watches the Super Bowl, or everybody that follows such so and so comedian, right, or everybody that loves the Star Wars movies, or like I was at this campsite, and all these, there's like hundreds of people. They all collect Coleman lanterns. I thought there's like thousands of Coleman lanterns, like from like, and it was like just a massive thing. I'm like, whoa, man, you guys must be pretty bored. But I mean, but there we go. But they have their own thing. No, but when everybody gets into something, have a Coke and a smile. Even these advertising things, they create, you could say, almost like a form of magic power. So someone can access individuals or aggregates to a certain, to a greater or lesser degree. But so this, it exists, but it exists. You see movies, all the subconscious stuff, all that. You know, I look at music videos now. These are astral world demonic stuff that people are being ritually initiated in their dreams by listening to this music and don't even know it. But then you, yes, it's not quote unquote real, but that's what they want to make with the damn, sorry to swear, this fucking AI bullshit, to make us live in this giant Mark Zuckerberg, you know, live in Mark Zuckerberg's underwear. That's like one of Dante should have had that, you know, in the Inferno. But I mean, literally, like they want to put us into this permanent astral state. This is a way of creating it. So, anyways, yeah.
Watch out what you say, Hans. Come back to bite you. You'll be an AI agent looking out for you, like the Matrix. This is Jim Jones talking about how he's a god.
And educate them and give them love and support. The thing you see out there is not socialism. It's a capitalistic device to stop socialism. A little bit of money to the drunk so he'll stay drunk and keep his children beat so they won't be able to grow up healthy. That's capitalism. But socialism will provide work. It'll provide work for all, and it'll provide comfort for all. It'll provide provisions for all. You've been told a lie. You'll hear me talk much about socialism because it's my middle name. I am God, and God is love, and love is socialism. So you'll hear me speak much of socialism. You cannot separate the one from the other, and I will have it all over this wide extended plain. There's nothing you can do about it.
Wow.
Look at that word usage all over this plane, too.
Straight
It's like
hypnosis,
the astral
man.
plane, man.
That's yeah.
He's folding all that. I'm God, I'm love, I'm socialist. So they have to think all those things. So like they're being programmed. Socialism is love, like so. And when they were at the end and before that woman was singing in the other clip, they were talking about how they're fighting fascism, and like, oh, what if the fascists come and get our kids?
It's not much different today. People bandy that word around like Jim Jones. Like there's some kind of fascist out there. It's not a good word.
Well, yeah, but that's the same old thing from World War II is the socialists against the fascists, and that's the Nazis were fascists and blah blah blah, and the socialism is the purity and the goodness, whatever. Everybody can work. Yeah, that's called slavery. I remember that. Yeah, everybody can work.
The States was COVID under Biden, right? So come on, let's listen.
You can take me and put me in the jails, and I will take it and use it for my glory. You can put me on the end of a noose. You can hang me at Yardmore at the highest tree at high noon. But you can hang my body as I've been hung and killed for 42 generations. I've been destroyed, but I'll spring up again. You cannot stamp me out. I'm here to stay.
In certain part of this tape, he talks about his miracles. If people don't know this, Jim Jones was like an old, carnival preacher who would do healings and claimed all kinds of stuff, prophecy.
Nothing you can do. If you give me bad publicity, I'll march around your newspapers and get more publicity. And if it's bad news, we'll take it and use it and not get discouraged. Because as Mae West said, and if that old girl can know truth, surely God can know truth. She said, I don't care how they write my name. I don't care what they say about me in the newspaper, as long as they spell my name right. And we must have that attitude because the newspapers are owned by big business. They're owned by the capitalists that have kept the blacks down. They're the very ones that used to stir up the lynch mobs. The newspapers are controlled by wealth. There's only one in every city, and they're always controlled by big money. So you can't expect them to be friendly to us. They're just having a little rest. They'll take after us again. But let's not worry. As long as they spell our name right, we'll take the best of it. Whatever knock comes, they will use it for a boost. Every prosecution will be an upliftment. Every persecution will be an unfoldment. We shall go through. No matter what they give us, we will turn it around. Even though they mean it for evil, we'll turn it around and use it for good, because we shall remain.
I'm going to invert it, right? That's the goal.
He says in this other one, he says, I am the Messiah.
This is Hypnosis 101, man. This is Ericksonian Hypnosis plus NLP language programming and all these weird inversions, logical leaps. This guy knows what he's doing, actually, even though he sounds whacked out. He's a little Jim Jones. He reminds me of, this Philip K. Dick novel where, people are colonists on Mars and they play this game called Perky Pat and they get these hallucinogens and they enter into this board game and they live inside of it. And that's what they all live for. And that's like this, like these people are literally completely out of the world. They're in this board game that Jim Jones has invented. You know what I mean? Like it's this levels of derealization, I think, are endemic now. And this is where it starts.
He says, I am God the Messiah. At another point, his discussions of Jesus switches in mid-sentences from the third person to the first person. So he's like mixing them up, like there's this other guy, but I'm also him,
That's how they get you.
And he talks about
that was almost a pace lead, right? Like it's like they even did that in the Beatles song where they were saying hallelujah, hallelujah, Hare Krishna. Like it's pace, and then they just switch it, right? And so that's almost what Jim Jones was doing. And like this just reminds me of WWF too, or WWF or whatever the hell it's called now. But like they, you know, it's that same grandiose, over the top, like, you know what I mean? And you see this in rap music too, where it's just this like grandiose narcissism, like I'm everything and like, you know what I mean? It's just over the top and people just love it. They just eat it up, you know? It's like it's showmanship.
It's the alpha monkey syndrome. Everybody wants to see the alpha monkey, you know. Like it's really crazy. This is, I mean, this show is blowing my mind. I can't. Thank you for bringing the clips, William. This is great. We didn't even really fully say that the military is a cult. We kind of danced around a little bit. We said military this, military that. But the military is a controlled environment where they're made to bond with each other in trauma situations and to react in right brain and not think, and to become, and like even Kubrick in Full Metal Jacket, like Joker was saying into the monologue or whatever, is saying that the government doesn't want robots. They want hard men, you know, like that will think, and you know it. But they do want robots. They want man robots. You can't get a soldier out of a piece of metal because he has to think with his right brain and thinking quickly in those moments. So they have to. Again, Joker was saying into the camera, I wanted to be the first one on my block with a confirmed kill. And it's like showing how do you take an innocent child from the suburbs and turn him into a murderer? And you got to have all this mind control. And that's what boot camp is. And, the authority, the will of yourself is replaced by the will to authority. And now the orders are replacing the internal, conscience, I guess, or the internal workings of the mind that would make you have logical conclusions. It like drapes a cloak over your conscious mind. That I guess I'm running out of words, but do you guys understand what I'm saying? The military, right, Jamie? The military is a cult.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I think I was in the military, so we've talked about this a lot. And I was young when I was in the military, so I didn't really understand all this stuff then. But I'm very observant. And then when I got older and was studying all this stuff and looking back, I was like, oh my gosh, they were doing all that stuff. And a lot of stuff in the military seems innocuous, but it's accessing different parts of your brain. So like even polishing your boots is like extreme attention to detail, fixating on one thing really intently to just like, you know what I mean? Like that. It's like little things like that. You think, oh, they just do it because they've always done it. There's no real purpose to it, right? But there's actually all based on the psychology. And like, I mean, we could just go down the list, like isolation, changing your normal routines, like the group bonding, the trauma bonding, the social role modeling, the drill sergeants, your identity, the camaraderie, like, it's like on the military base too. One thing I always remembered from being in the military is that if you tried to do drill by thinking, you would trip. And so I remember learning how to do drill. The only way, and for people who don't know what drill is, it's when you're on the parade square and somebody's yelling orders at you, like left, right, turn, and all these commands. And when you're young and you don't want to screw up and you're trying really hard, you'll actually screw it up. But when you actually just turn your mind off and just listen to the drill sergeant sound you'll actually just start turning left and right like a puppet. And if you think about it, you'll actually mess it up. As soon as you go over to your left brain, you have to turn your brain off to be a good order follower. And that's why in the military they'll give you orders for like tiny little things, because the answer to everything is yes, sir. And again, it's that little slippery slope, right? So it's like yes sir to little thing, and then in the end it's yes sir to go kill somebody, even if it's somebody you might not be, shouldn't maybe be killing, like a child or a civilian. You know what I mean? Like you see how, what was that? There was one story where this guy got out of the military. I think it was on a Dr. Phil show. They were interviewing him, and his military platoon leader, when they got out, he convinced them all to go rob banks together. And but because he was their drill sergeant and had such total control over them as a platoon, that like it kind of went to a legal case where they were saying, like, did these people actually have the ability to say no to this person, because like it was such a group of people that had done it, and they kept saying, well, like, he convinced us that it was like an order, and he was our sergeant, and then it was kind of interesting to see like people carrying that out of the institution even.
That's perfectly encapsulates it. I was trying to say that thank you. So, Hans, your camera. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So, I mean, the best armies, I mean, of course, you're going to have some autonomy, right? So the more you create the robot slaves, you're going to also lose the efficiency of the organization. But, we have to see again the psychological topology, physical space and psychic and psychological space. And it's all mathematics. It's all based on vector fields, flows. You can do calculations, you can look at dynamics, and you're encountering. So I say astral or whatever, but so these are influences, right? They help create and shape the psychic space. And so the cult essentially, it's like the John Lennon said, your inside is out and your outside is in, right? So it's that full flipping. But I think, again, the success of this endeavor of research for all these decades is we're looking at it, right? Until it breaks down, but we're looking at it. I mean, COVID is the ultimate example of this. And it's using also this astral, maybe, non-physical, not necessarily kinetic, but with some psychic impact layer. You could call it also connected with the collective unconscious. Um, and with waves, radio waves, this and that, and other things. So it's kind of an interesting amalgamated hybrid type of thing. But you're able to program such a level. You still see people wearing those masks. It's like, dude, I mean, I just saw people today. They have this aura of righteousness. I'm wearing a mask. I am very healthy. You're a disease carrier. I mean, it's just like, whoa. I mean, anyways, it causes brain damage, dude. Fuck.
Hell yeah. I'm so glad that William and Hans are here for that. Let's go to that. Let's shift to that now. What can we learn from Jonestown and apply it to COVID? I'll open up the floor, William or Jamie, if you'd like to go.
I mean,
what's interesting is that person wearing the mask now is doing it while they're socially outed, whereas before they were doing it to fit in, and now it's carried forward where they're the one standing out in the crowd still wearing a mask. I find that kind of interesting.
Yeah. What were you saying, William?
I'm trying to find some clip where he says, "I'm a god, you're a god, we're all gods." But I think, the little mini Jonestown. You had to do it because everybody else was doing it. You had to save your grandmother. You had to save your kids. So we really went through something like and constant, over the speakers, just repeated things. There's going to be a season of death and everything. They laid it out like. I'm surprised there's not I'm not surprised there's a revolution because we've all been psycho-civilized to a certain extent, greater or lesser extent, but it's really an extraordinary event. So they basically took Jonestown and globalized it. It's really a globalized Jonestown, and people did stuff against their best interest, and even just suspended their logical, reasoning. So I don't think anybody had ever seen that coming. Probably people at Jonestown never expected the horrors. They had been just totally brainwashed. It's interesting because Jones in his sermon is talking about other people being brainwashed. So he's pretty clever about that. So it's obviously somebody else who's brainwashed. The other guy's the tyrant. The capitalists are the bad guys. And that's the way it was. It was an us against them kind of thing that they built into the COVID structure, which was you're good if you do it. If you don't, you're bad. You're risking yourself and others. It's not part of the group, thought to, have any independent things. Trust the experts. And so that's the kind of, look at the language that they used in that thing with Jim Jones, daddy, father, family. So it's almost like Manson family stuff. Like, so these kind of concepts that are turning very personal things that happen within families to the larger group dynamics, which you would never call you call somebody daddy because they're your boss with not good intentions, not your real father, but somebody else. So it's like a ersatz sense of relationships, and that goes into the kind of undercurring or inversion of proper words and structures and concepts and meaning that Jones is doing constantly. Like, he's just mixing up people's brains like over and over again. It's incredible. Let me see if I can find this clip.
Yeah, it was real righteous to go and get your shot. And it was, you're saving humanity by killing you, or depending on what shot you got, you either died or you got turbo cancer or all the, that too was an experiment. I think, William, it was your thought that the batches were on purpose and they were tracking the batches to see what, they would have experimenting on all the different things they could shoot into people and seeing the levels of, but in any case, it was righteous for us to go and, put ourselves in danger, go against our personal, like our own will to live and our own will to breathe air. And at the same time, they had everybody could take a break from the COVID thing and go out and protest. And when they were protesting, they were saying, I can't breathe. I can't. And it's like they're wearing masks. It's like, it's next level. But so, our own biology wants us to breathe, but we're going against that. And we're proving to everybody else that we're going against our own biological necessities. And I am righteous for doing so. And I am in a group and my righteousness proves that I am loyal and good, and my action proves my action in cohesion with the group is my that is my moral will, and all morality goes towards the group will, and so they no longer think rationally. The Fauci is the science. He even said so. When you're, so,
and then had to plead the fifth 111 times, which he wasn't allowed to do there because he was already pardoned for the last 10 years. Which, why would you even have to do a pardon if he's so good? Like,
that goes back 10 years.
Yeah, that's the kind of dissonance that people have to think that he's a good guy. You don't need to be pardoned for anything because you're working above board. Oh, he's one of the greatest mass murderers. It's so strange too, because I think he got a job at like Georgetown University. So none of the Jesuit priests who were touted by the Catholics as being like the hardest, brightest things are like, this guy's a monster. And the church used to be really ardently pro-life. Like, you don't have abortions. You don't do that used to be what differentiated them from other churches, was just stridently pro-life, always choose, life over anything. So
but then the Pope said, go get the jab. Well, because it's okay now, because the Pope said so.
Yeah, so it's changed. It's infiltration.
Well, dude, it's crazy.
But see, one of the things, if you look, okay, great example. They have birth now. It's basically a full-grown baby. Now it's just legalized in multiple states.
In Massachusetts, yes, right.
No, I think it's like 8 or 10 states now.
I think it's like
it's like right before birth. Isn't that called murder?
Yeah.
I think that's called
They're
murder.
celebrating it. It's all women.
So
they're all celebrating it. Like, hey, death. Yay.
For those that don't understand, the legal term for birth is when the head of the baby leaves the mother. So they manipulate the baby to come out backwards, feet first. They get the baby's entire body out, but they leave the head inside. And then they use scissors to stab the back of the head, and they swirl the scissors around to destroy the brains and kill the baby. And then they can pop it out dead, and all good. That's what they just legalized in Massachusetts. And Hillary Clinton is big on that. Oh, yeah, they get a check, right. And all the parts that came out whole, they can sell all that. In the old days, they had to go in with tweezers and try to pull off an arm, and I'm going to sell a lung of this baby. You know, there were audio clips of people that were sitting down with working out how much for hearts and how much for, the people that worked at Planned Parenthood were selling the parts. So think of how much money they could get from a whole baby that came out intact, fully good, all the stem cells and blood or whatever they get from it. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that is what is legal now. And Hans, you're right. And I just want to bring that up and say how they do it so people know.
All right, here he is. This is Jim Jones. This is not scripture, guys. I'm fairly familiar with scripture. He's just making this up out of whole cloth.
Go down the street to man.
All those things. Cord blood, stem cells.
So I'm going to have some folk. I'm going to separate the men from the boys and the ladies from the girls tonight. Don't you compare me to no unknown God. Now look at my house. My house isn't what I want it to be, but when I get through with my house, at least let's look at my house tonight. Nobody hungry in my house. I went downstairs to see that some that got in the food that wasn't even from Los Angeles, Fresno. I worry about that meticulously, and precious ones work with me. I say, I want the food at a certain time. I want them to have enough. I want to see that this one's got rest. Be with me here. I went down to her personally to see her, that she was moved from the other church over here, that everything worked out. I look after my own. Not one of mine that is hungry tonight. Not one of mine that doesn't have a place to rest tonight. And if you don't like where you live, I'll give you a better place. So I'll tell you, I'll give you a better place. I will look after my own. You say, what are you trying to do? I'm trying to narrow down so I figure out who my own are. Because when I get through, some of you folk are never going to come back and see me again. I won't have to worry about you. Because if you can't take the truth, you're not worth much anyhow, you see. The truth sets you free. That's all Jesus came to earth to say. He said, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That's what I've come back to tell you. You're going to know the truth, and the truth will liberate you. The truth will free you. The truth will set you free. Won't make any homages to the unknown God anymore. Won't have to make any offerings to the unknown God. You won't have to walk down the street with your head down, afraid somebody's going to knock you over with a bolt of lightning, because I'm going to free you from superstitions. I'm going to free you from all those fears. I'm going to cause you to know that you are what Jesus was. He said, what good work do you stone me? Jesus said, we don't stone you because of good works, Jesus. It's because you being a man make yourself God.
All right, here we go. This is where I wanted to start it. So.
He said, well, isn't it written to those whom the word of God came? Scripture can't be broken. He said, it's written that ye are gods. He said, I'm just doing what you have had written. It's in the book. Don't look at me funny. Jesus said that every human being was a god. I'll give you the verse in Scripture if you want me to give you the verse in Scripture. I can give you the verse in Scripture to the lie.
Yeah, I'll take it because you can't find it.
That you are God. I'm a God and you're a God. And I'm a God and I'm going to stay a God until you recognize that you're God. And when you recognize you're God, I shall go back into principle and will not appear as a personality. But until I see all of you knowing who you are, I'm going to be very much what I am. God, Almighty God.
There it is. I'm going to be very much what I am. God, Almighty God. Literally says that.
Sacrifice your children to me. Sacrifice your children.
He throws in like this Hindu thing in the middle of it.
Yeah,
You know, you're all
principle.
gods. You are gods. Just an aside though, in terms of the study, you know, for the, you could say large scale applied sociology, so to speak. The focal point, Margaret Mead, Bateson were kind of spearhead, as well as Lazarsfeld, many others, of the family structure, creating family structures, types of attachment patterns, and using the family structure and transposing that to the whole society and culture. And once you get inside that structure, this is really important. So they really use the family as a laboratory, but also as a large scale modeling, deployment modeling, right? And so that the Jim Jones thing is his textbook, dad, like right, you know, it's right here we go. So there's different, you know, Margaret Mead has this thing, the lifestyles of the future. You know, there's like, I think it's in the 70s, they got like four, you know, two dudes and three ladies. They're all married. They all have sex together. The kids sleep in the bed. It's like, this is, I mean, this is, you know, this is what, you know, these structures. So the family, surrogate family from the cult. Yeah. And it's, but I mean, COVID is still kind of mesmerizing to me because how is it possible that we can enter into such a space that there is such adherence to doctrines that are on their face completely retarded? I mean, come on. You know, I mean, it's just, but it's such a powerful identifier. And you said it's your righteousness, it's your goodness. Are you a good person? Oh no, you're not. Well, you could be, you know, so that anyways, this is the lack of development because of fragmented family structures. And then you also have agro-populations, male female relationships. You have a lot of variables to play with that can be tracked pretty well to allow for large scale things like this to work flawlessly.
Yeah, and it's the whole world too. It wasn't, and they all rolled it out together. You couldn't escape it. It was all, you know, it was as if Jim Jones's megaphone was on everybody's radio station and you couldn't turn it off. The whole fucking world, man. And you go ahead and sacrifice your kids to the new god, Fauci, or whoever it's going to be next time, you know, after Fauci's gone, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Bible says, aren't your gods? I think it's in Genesis, and then it's interposed, and Christ says it. Somebody mentioned Psalm 82:6, but it's not saying that they're gods. They're sons of God, but they're not gods in the way that Jim Jones says. Sorry, guys.
But that's what the Satanists want to say.
Yeah.
And so it's like he's kind of covertly saying what he wants to say from his satanic perspective and draping it in the, you know, the sheep's clothing of the Christian faith. And, you know, he's embodying the inversion, you know, like saying he's God, but then he's doing like what the devil would do. Right. I mean, it's the, anyway. So yeah, that, do you agree with that?
He goes on to kind of do a sympathy for the devil thing too, because he says like, the reason Lucifer left is because he was saying hallelujah, hallelujah. And then he came down. It was kind of like an interesting, it was very like the devil's bad type thing that you would hear.
Right. He's actually good, guys. Shh, come on in the corner, I'll tell you.
What's impressive is how fast he flips these things. You start out with something normal, and then you end up, and it's like, and he's a flaming communist. He's hanging out with Russians. He's hanging out with communist agents. He's got militant stuff. I mean, how's this guy walking around? But he goes through very fast sequences to people arrive at destinations. There'll be a few little U-turns, and he's but they just lap it up. That's what I mean. So they're already. But, you know, again, you have the approval. Oh, if I'm not cheering for Jim, if I'm not clapping for Netanyahu, I'm a bad person. I got to clap. And that's also part of it because that creates the social pressure. So,
are you anti-Semitic, Hans? How could you?
I love the Jews are God. The Jews
yeah,
are
you
God.
better.
This is Jones. I can find the recording if I can do it. It's just not easy.
The Jews are
He
God.
made a beautiful one.
I'm a
Lucifer.
Mir Goyim.
He made him the most beautiful angel. That cotton picker he wasn't. Lucifer up there, he said, ha ha ha. He give me too much of his brains. He gives me too much of his looks. He looked over that mess and said, I'm not going to go around there bowing and scraping him. I took a third page. Oh, I don't know. We were talking about Lucifer being what a kind of guy.
Up there. Right.
What caused you to leave heaven? So he's like literally talking kind of about Lucifer. It's weird. Anyway, these are really good. There's the full thing is Jonestown and the People's Temple, a digital archive. People can check out all the sermons and stuff on there if they're interested.
There's a bunch of tapes too, right? MP3s. I think that's the website with that.
Yeah, there's a lot
Okay.
of information.
Yeah.
I think I'm wrapped it up unless you guys have something else. We're at the 2-hour mark, 180 live listeners. Thanks everybody for listening and the comments.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Jamie, you've done lots of podcasts with other people, but you don't have your own. That might change soon, hopefully. But tell us where people can find you. Should they just Google your name, Jamie J, spelled Jaymee Jay? Is that best?
Oh, sorry, my mic was off. Yeah, people can just Google me. I don't know. I must have at least 100 podcasts by now, I think, and I'm just on a whole bunch of different people's shows, and I'm a real generalist, so you might find a podcast on all types of different things. I guess ritual abuse is kind of my main thing that I'm trying to be an advocate for, but I do a lot of shows on a lot of different things, like cover crime stories or do psychology, all kinds of stuff. It's so yeah, if anybody wants to Google me, just Google my name and a whole bunch of random stuff will come up.
And people can find many of your shows on Wake the Dead. You've been a guest on Wake the Dead multiple times, and your first podcast talking about SRA was on Wake the Dead, and people can find that in the archives. So
yeah, I never wanted to podcast. Actually, it was never a goal of mine, but I was taking the Mark Passio media course, and that's where me and Sean met. And then he just wanted me to do a podcast just to practice using technology. And I think he got a lot of hits on that show. And then people just started asking me to come on their shows. And then now I've just been like podcasting for a couple of years. It's kind of funny because I never like wanted to do it or set out to do it. So.
Well, you're a very good speaker, and you're very good at transferring the information into our ears, and we thank you very much for being here to join us today. William and Han, let's start with William. People can find you at William Ramsey Investigates.
William Ramsey Investigates, and website William Ramsey Investigates. And I've reposted a lot of the old shows we did. I posted the whole series of The Manchurian Candidate, of which this is 18 or 19, right? So you can go back. They're all in one thing, so it's easy to access the audio. And also an old one I did with Hans, which is MK Ultra for the Masses. Music is the Weapon. That's 8-part. And I also reposted in all together is 49 parts of my Bioweapon Blues about COVID, which is just crazy long. I can't even believe I did that many. There's a lot of information there. So I'm kind of reposting that. But people like them because they kind of came out not one after the other, but there'd be one and then 2 weeks would pass and 2 weeks. So putting them all together, like we did our shows on Sundays, putting them all together made it accessible so people could start from the beginning and just go through this whole series. I think it's worthwhile. And I also would say that I think our research into Manchurian Candidate and Esther Brooks, it really was a watermark in the history of American mind control, because we covered some stuff and covered these documents that are far more, just as important to me as some of this other stuff that came out of MK Ultra. You talked about really the beginnings of it, which started in the 30s with Esther Brooks, Erickson, the personality change, Johnny Walker, which basically, in my opinion, Patty Hearst got Johnny Walkerized. And, nobody knew these terms. They didn't know that you could, through these things, this lead, pace lead type techniques, that you can literally adjust people's personalities to do things that are against their conscience. like Patty Hearst or these people at Jonestown. So check those out. Those Manchurian Candidates really, people are quoting, and I'm pretty sure I heard another guy quote something that was pretty obscure about the Manchurian Candidate film about Heinz 57. So I was like, this guy has to be listening to our shows. But somebody with a far larger reach than us. Anyway, I'm really proud of those, and I'm proud of the work we've done. I'm glad to be with you guys again. I took a little bit of break. I was traveling and stuff, but I'm glad to be back in the saddle, so to speak. So.
Well, we're glad to be here, and thank you, William, for sharing, for putting those together, and for having us here together again, and facilitating with your system here. We can broadcast to everybody at once, and thank you for continuing. And Hans, tell us about Resident State. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so Resident State, interestingly, Jamie, I kind of had a path like yours, minus a sexy Canadian accent. No, I'm just kidding. But I didn't want to do podcasting. I was actually at one point, I was on many different shows. And I was like, I don't want to do this. That's why I didn't do it. But I just said, I had like a goal notebook. I looked, start a podcast. And I'm like, I wrote it down. So I just did it. And so it's maybe trundling is the right word. It's sprinting with great alacrity. So I'm going to be uploading some new shows. I got locked. We had tornadoes here in Ohio. Didn't have internet for like 10 days, man. So a little bit rough, but in Columbus at least. But yeah, so I do the Resident State, and I've got a lot of stuff posted. I've got a whole number of things I'll be posting quite soon. So I'm on BitChute. I am on Spotify, Rumble, Odyssey, and YouTube. And that's it. And I do have some music stuff, hanshunter.com. Check it out. I'm going to be releasing some music and just trying to like dial life in, man, before we all end up living in a 15-minute city.
Yeah, it's not that far off, guys. We got about 3 good months until rumblings of the Civil War start.
When I was in the Soviet Union, you see these old statues of like Lenin. They're always like, Lenin or Stalin or whatever. Mostly like Lenin and Marx. I just think we're going to be, the city's going to be Bill Gates, Donald Trump, Andy Fauci.
No.
They're going to be like sitting
man.
walk by. This, seriously, it's like
the cities are going to be bad. Imagine like leftists with the technate combined. The Cheka people just be like slavering in their graves. Wow, we got information on everybody.
This is a prisoner. I got to do something on the prisoner show. I did a lot of
flock stuff is crazy. It's not for your safety, guys. Yeah. It's not for your safety. We're not far off. It's bad. So start prepping. Sean, what about you? Why don't you add what you've been up to, where people can find your stuff?
Jamie, did you want to say something real quick before I said?
Well,
so you raising your hand.
I just wanted to. I was just laughing because I just bought a bus to live in because I know stuff's gonna go down. But
right, it's
that I was just before we left, I just didn't know if that picture had gone up that William had at the beginning, because it just dawned on me now that I can't believe it was all syringes at Jonestown. Like I actually didn't even know that. It's just so weird, like the COVID connection. It just dawned on me now, like, oh my gosh, it actually was needles. It wasn't even the Kool-Aid. I didn't even realize that till that picture. Did you actually put that picture up, William, or was that before?
Yeah, could you put it up? Yeah, that was before the recording.
Just the thought going out.
Sorry, William. Sorry. But yeah, it's the.
I'm trying to find it, guys. User error. Sorry.
It's the aftermath of. Yeah, look at that. Looks like needle
That's
porn.
why I picked it. A lot of people don't know this, but like John Judge talks about it, that these people, they had syringe marks all over them. The bodies were moved. So those original pictures that people saw in all the media in 1978, that's after it. And there were tons of bodies before. And John Judge says there was like 400 that took the drugs, and then like 400 that were shot, or like they chased them down and put them back in there. It was a huge operation. And it's incredible. So they left out the part of the syringes to the public. They just told the story. Everybody went to the big, Kool-Aid. It wasn't Kool-Aid. It was some drink or something.
Flavor Aid.
Flavor Aid, thank you. But they went there and they took the sips and they died. That's not true. Yep. It was all covered up. It was a huge cover-up. And like any other huge event in the U.S., after the event, people started dying too around Northern California, which is a whole nother show. So like, There were other deaths, other suspicious deaths, and other things around Jonestown, which is another show.
Well, this is an important phenomenon that I just want to note that we see in a number of different occasions. Most clear examples, like, say, War of the Worlds broadcast. Yes, some people freaked out, massively exaggerated. And this exaggeration was put into the consciousness. It's still there, right? War of the Worlds, people are running this. There was some, but not that much. Jonestown, most of the people were killed. Or also shot or whatever, but it's most people think everybody there just dutifully drank the Kool-Aid. It's not true, right? But it's also putting an idea forth, right? It's putting sort of a tendency into the atmosphere, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So, and then look, right after this, that's when the cult membership, just blasts off. But that the idea that, 900 people, they all were brainwashed, they all killed themselves. It's not true. Most of them were killed by, syringe or shot or whatever. But this goes into people's minds or subconscious. They begin to agree with this and acquiesce to this, even subliminally. I don't know if that makes sense, but it creates like a cultural weight, so, to a certain degree.
But they could control the media back then. And my understanding that they picked the spot because it was a former military camp, like it was a U.S. military camp or something like that. So it's like, this is really creepy. And there's other pictures. There's a picture of Jim Jones. I couldn't find it, but like he's literally opening the door to the medicine cabinet, and there's just drugs everywhere. And Jones was like high to the gills, like he was a pill popper and a meth head, and just wasted. That's why he wore those dark glasses to cover up how freaking gacked he was. So there's just, so drugs are just redolent throughout this whole thing, and abuse and mind control. It's just really disgusting.
Yeah, cocaine and narcissism are a deadly combination for sure.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, meth and tranquilizers and what he was on.
Mind control and MK Ultra and the CIA.
Right.
Bad combo.
But that's Hollywood now. Anyway, that picture really does encapsulate what
Yeah, I didn't want to miss it.
It came through a needle.
It was there. Yeah.
It's even creepier because it says Yale hypodermic needles. Like, what the hell is something from Yale doing that? Can't they buy something from South America or what?
Dude.
What the hell is it shipped in from like some WASP lab, like run by like some MKL? What's the guy who worked at Yale? It was the
Skull and Bones donated it.
Yeah, no, but true. But there was the one guy around that time. What's the guy who did the test on the bulls? What was his name? Delgado worked at Yale. That was very.
Oh, right.
So
yeah.
What does that say? Physical control of the mind. She's got the book right there.
People don't know Delgado had radio controlled stuff in the 60s, man. It's radio waves. They were originally doing invasive stuff. You don't need to do invasive stuff because it runs on frequencies, right? And I do want to just one last differentiation, pace, lead, but a lot of like the Esther Brooks is just straight up hypnosis, right? They're a little bit of pacing, but you're hypnotized, right? And they're hypnotizing people to blow up army bases, maybe to sink submarines. He's like, what if hypothetically some crew members were hypnotized to sink the submarine? And then their submarine sinks, about a month later. Hypothetically, if this had been
right.
But the Jonestown, this is like, they were also being drugged too, the population there. This is a really dark, but as we look at it, very open, straight up experiment. Jim Jones is straight up CIA. And just to remind people, I started in the beginning, he was vetted and feted and was a very respected and prominent member of society, that all the movie shakers were flocking to him. Literally.
It's so weird because even Moscone relied upon Jones and his power base to get into office. So he was courted as a kind of like public figure that you wanted to have on your side. And one of the things is like something very similar to COVID took place at Jonestown, where they were administering drug A and drug B and seeing, it was like a test case to see what people would do. So like they had the normal people, and then they had the people on their drugs. So they're administering weird drugs to people without their consent. I forgot the name of it. It's in that book. It's in the book by Myers. It's
Those all look like really great books. I'll probably actually order them and read them. So, but I think another topic that people might want to research is, really like how much drugs were being given to the actual people there, not just what Jim Jones was doing, but like, think about if instead of cyanide in that Kool-Aid, it was scopolamine, and then people went and injected their kids. Like, I think there's probably a lot more drug, conspiracy there if someone were to actually really look into it. Like, were those people all being kept, in a drugged state? It wouldn't surprise me at all. I think there was a lot of drug testing, and I think I had mentioned to Sean earlier that Mark Phillips and Kathy O'Brien's book, they did mention that there was drug testing going on in Jonestown. So I don't know. It's just something that maybe people might want to try and find out more dirt on, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty obvious from this picture that it was,
What if they were giving him like Prozac? What if they were giving Prozac type drugs? And then the whole antidepressant thing is fake, and you're actually one giant Jonestown. That's how bad it is. Because do you know what the foundational like construct, like chemical bond is? Fluoride. I think that it's basically like a variant of fluoride. Is what
it is, yeah.
And that's what they were giving to the gate kids, the pink drink, right? It's the same. It's like Prozac juice.
So we're all psycho-civilized to a larger, greater extent. And in my opinion, if you're taking anything at this point from Big Pharma, you're just dealing with you literally the drug dealer on the corner is more honest and has more integrity than this Big Pharma. I'm not exaggerating at all.
Drugs.
That's not hyperbole, guys. I literally can tell you that the drug dealer that gives you your weed or whatever is probably more honest than Big Pharma. So, Sean, why don't you wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say somebody in the chat said that was a needle company, Yale Epidermic. Maybe that's the name of the company, Yale. But anyway, so Wake the Dead is where you can find my work. I started a new podcast as another one called Occult Kubrick, where I'm kind of trying to put my Kubrick stuff over there and have Wake the Dead for everything else. And so people can find that, both of those on, all the, YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey, and Spotify. You'll find all the stuff. So Wake the Dead. And thank you, everybody, for doing this, because this is really it's a joy for me to have all these, to talk about this. And I'm glad that Jamie could join us and she could meet you guys, and hopefully you'll have further podcasts with her later. She does a lot of research into the books. She just reads all the time, so it's great, and we hope that the listeners will also find her as a good resource to where to start, like digging into like understanding SRA and what books are good. And Jamie's very good for that, and people should listen up for her. And hopefully your future works, Jamie, we will be seeing those as well. I hope to see those. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Wake the Dead and The Resonant State and William Ramsey Investigates. Thank you all, and thank you.
Thank you, and good night.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Cheers. Stay there.
Great.
Stay there.